Today, we will be visiting Eltz Castle, which is like 15-minute walk from the parking lot. The Eltz Castle, or Burg Eltz, is a medieval castle nestled in the hills above the Moselle between Koblenz and Trier in Germany. It is still owned by a branch of the House of Eltz, who have lived there since the 12th century. It is called the Gannerbenburg, or castle belonging to a community of joint heirs. The castle is divided into several parts which belong to different families or different branches of the family. This usually occurs when multiple owners of one or more territories jointly build a castle to house themselves. Only wealthy medieval European lords could afford to build castles or equivalent structures on their own lands. Many of them only owned one village or even only a part of a village. This was an insufficient base to afford castles. Such lords usually lived in night houses, which were fairly simple houses, scarcely bigger than those of their tenants. In some parts of the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation, inheritance law required that the estate be divided among all successors. These successors, which of those individual inheritance was too small to build a castle of his own, could build a castle together, where each owned one separate part of a housing, and all of them together shared the defensive fortification. In the case of Eltz, the family comprised three branches and the existing castle was enhanced with three separate complexes of buildings. The main part of the castle consists of the family portions that raise up to 8 stories. They are fortified with strong exterior walls. To the yard they present a partial framework. About 100 members of the owner's families live in over 100 rooms of the castle. A village one existed below, on its south side, which housed servants, craftsmen, and their families supporting the castle. We're still walking down the path to the castle. The difficult part will be going back, as you can see, downhill. Later it's gonna be up. The castle's history began when it was founded in a region that was the important trade route between rich farmlands and their markets in the Roman period. With the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the late 5th century BE, the area was conquered by the Franks. However, with the division of Charlemagne's empire, the land was given to his son Louis the Pious about 814. It was during this period that the site was occupied by a simple manor hall with an earthen palisade. Several hundred years later, in 1157, Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa issued the Deed of Donation, which was signed and sealed by Rudolf von Eltz as one of the witnesses. He resided in what was then still a small castle complex next to the Eltzbach, a tributary to the Moselle. The castle was in an important position, built along the trade route that linked the Moselle River, a historic important trade route in the German Empire with the Eifel and the fertile Mayfield. The brothers Elias of the Golden Lion, Wilhelm of the Silver Lion, and Theodoric of the Waffelhorns had a dispute and the family split up before 1268. This led to the castle and the estate being divided among the three branches of the family, each with their own coat of arms. There was also an extensive building activity during the second half of the 13th century and the beginning of the 14th century. One can presume that this followed the rift in the family, which required a new residential buildings for each family. Between 1331 to 36, the castle endured the only serious military conflicts in its history during the Eltz feud, when lords in the region, including Johann of Eltz, together with the Free Imperial Knights, opposed the territorial policies of Balduin von Trier, who was the Elector and Prince Archbishop of Trier. As a result of the standoff, Balduin laid siege to Johann at Eltz Castle. It was bombarded by primitive cannons known as pot de fer and catapults from a small siege castle, the Trutzeltz Castle, which was built on a rocky outcrop on the hillside above the castle. The siege of Eltz ended after 2 years, when the Free Imperial Knights agreed to accept the laws and rule of Trier. Archbishop Balduin reinstated Johann to the Burgrave, but only as his vassal and no longer as a free knight. Started in 1470 by Philip zu Eltz, the 10-story Greater Rondendorf house takes its name from the family's land holding in Lorraine. The oldest part is the flag hall with its late Gothic vaulted ceiling, which was probably originally a chapel. Construction was completed around 1520. The so-called Little Rondendorf house was finished in 1540, also in late Gothic style. It contains the vaulted banner room. In 1472, the House of Rubenbach completed the castle wing that has late Gothic architecture too. The buildings include the Rubenach Lower Hall, living room, and the bedchamber with its creative decorative walls. In 1615, the Kempenig's house replaced the original castle hall. Every room in this part of the castle could be heated, in contrast to other castles that might have only one or two heated rooms. During the Palatinate War of Succession from 1688 to 89, many of the early Rhenish castles were destroyed. This castle was saved from destruction because its lord at the time was Hans Anton zu Eltz-Utzingen, who was also a senior officer in the Royal French Army under Louis XIV. Eltz-Utzingen was able to use his position to delete the castle bearing his name from the list of buildings and fortifications to be destroyed. Then came Count Hugo Philipp zu Eltz, who have thought to have fled during the French rules on the Rhine from 1794 to 1815. The French confiscated his possessions on the Rhine and nearby Trier, which included the castle, as well as the associated goods which were held at the French headquarters in Koblenz. In 1797, when Count Hugo, later turned out to have remained hidden in mines, came back to reclaim his lands, goods, and wealth. In 1815, he became the sole owner of the castle through the purchase of Rubenacher House and the landed property of the barons of Eltz-Rubenach. Then came the preservation. In the mid-19th century, Count Karl zu Eltz restored the castle. Between 1845 and 88, about 184,000 marks, or about 15 million euros in 2015, was spent on extensive construction work that carefully preserved the existing architecture. In the 1980s, accessibility for visitors was significantly improved, and an increasing number of guests from near and far visited the castle to see the castle on the 500 Deutschmark banknote. Extensive security and restoration work took place between the years 2009 to 2012. Among them were the Vault of Flags Hall. It was secured after it was a risk of partially collapsing wall and the porch of the Kempenig section. In addition to these static repairs, almost all the slate roofs were replaced. Structural problems were remedied in the ceiling and wood damage was repaired. The interior heating and sanitary facilities, windows and fire alarm systems were renewed, and also historic plaster was restored. The half-timber facades and the spiral staircase were renovated at a cost of around 4.4 million euros. The measures were supported by a 2 million euro grant from an economic stimulus package provided by the German federal government. The state of Rhineland-Palatinate, the German Foundation of the Monument Protection, and the owners provided further funds. The Rubenach and Rudendorf family wings in the castle are open to the public, and visits are seasonal, from April to November. As for us, we bought 3 tickets with 14 euro for each person, which is about $15. On the other hand, the Kempenig branch continued to use their third of the castle, so it's not open to the public. Also, photography are not allowed during the tour, so most of the interior you saw here in the video are from their official website. So it's up to you if you want to do the tour. But for us, we did it. The Armory. The entrance to the Rubenach house was converted into an armory during the Romantic period. It contains the oldest surviving cannon bolts in the world, swords, halberds, shields, bows and arrows, as well as muskets of the 14th to 17th century. The Rubenach Lower Hall. This was the living room of the Eltz family. It was built in 1311 and houses the famous painting Madonna with Child and Grapes, a world-class masterpiece by Lucas Cranach the Elder. The Rubinac Upper Hall or Bedchamber. This large living quarter with its ornamental murals of 1450 by a Burgundy artist is also referred to as the bedchamber because of the large carved four-poster bed in this room. The dressing room. Adjoining the bedchamber, it is also decorated with 15th century murals, floral and figurative images such as Huta and Lancelot of Eltz of the line with the silver lion and the date 1451. The study. In 1881, Count Karl furnished the room above the Rubinac entrance as a study for his wife, Ludwig. The murals depict late Gothic vines framing portraits of himself and his 2 sons and 6 daughters in romantic poses. The Prince Elector's Room. This room is named after the 2 electors from the House of Eltz, Jacob zu Eltz of Trier and Philip Karl zu Eltz of Mainz. Its original furnishings document the stylistic developments during the 17th and 18th century. The Knight's Hall. This late medieval hall of 1520 was used for festivities and as a meeting hall by all 3 branches of the family on Eltz Castle. Remarkable are the original heavy oak ceiling, the heraldic frieze, the original floor tiles, as well as some beautiful suits of armor, the jester mask, and the Rose of Silence. The Angel or Hunting Room. This pentagonal room contains hunting weapons and trophies, furniture with fine intarsia, and an old embrasure dating from the construction period of the castle. Next door is the attic of the castle chapel with a collection of model cannons. The Wambold Room. Named after the family of Count Karl's mother, is furnished with beautifully carved and inlaid furniture, Dutch portraits, a tapestry of 1600, as well as historic household implements, a clothes press, a spinning wheel, and a reel dating from the 17th and 18th century. The Countess Room or Nursery. This small chamber is referred to as a Countess Room or Nursery because of the paintings of children and young members of the House of Eltz or their relatives. Here you can also see probably the oldest surviving painted Renaissance bed in Germany, which was made around 1525. The Banner Hall. Built around 1480 with its opulent late Gothic Rhenish net vault, is the most spectacular room in the castle. It was probably a chapel before being integrated into the Grob-Prodendorf house around 1510. Later, it was used as a living and dining room. Rondendorf Kitchen. The 15th century kitchen is one of the originally 4 kitchens in the castle. The objects displayed here date from the 15th to the 19th century. The guide around the castle almost takes about an hour. And once we finish it, we went to another exhibit, which you can take photos and videos. It is the Armory and the Treasury. It contains gold, silver, porcelain artifacts, and religious relics, while the Armory consists of historic weapons and suits of armor. We're looking at the collections in the Treasury of the Eltz Castle. It probably belonged to the family. Saint John of Nepomuk, 1752. Different versions of a flintlock rifle. variety of flintlock pistol. The family's coat of arms. This exhibit is dedicated to Philip Carl Eltz, a highly respected Prince-Elector of Mainz and Imperial Arch-Chancellor. The Emperor Charles VI permitted him in 1734 to acquire the dominion of Vukovar in Croatia. These are the portraits of Count Karl in his youth and as an old man wearing a Hungarian dress. There is also his wife Lidvin, Countess Pejagesvik de Veroske. Porcelain collection manufactured in Hoesch. This cabinet includes a picture of Archduke Johann of Austria, objects d'art, and snuff boxes. Porcelain and candlesticks Vienna, 18th and 19th century. Tournament suit of armor, German, around 1500. Different crossbows such as steel with bow, cocking device, and bullet crossbows. A collection of sword with plain crossguard, daggers, bridle, and spurs. Maces, warhammers, morning star, and shield. Drinking vessels, decorative bowls, mugs, and chalice. A couple of King Gustav Adolf on horseback. Different chalices and vessels for holy water. Belt, pendants, and sword hanger. Hercules, Kronos, and Atlas holding globes, drinking vessels in the form of a ship. Monster 1590. Diana riding a stag. Gluttony being conveyed by drunkenness. Coat clasp and belts. Coins and medals and treasurer's keys. In 2018, Jakob, the eldest son of Sophie and Karl, was appointed to succeed his father as the manager of the estate. The castle is now in the hands of the 34th generation of the Lords and Counts von und zu Eltz. This line has been uninterrupted since the 12th century. Moving forward, the 21st century will continue to see Eltz Castle, a charmingly preserved gem of historic castle architecture, as one of the most favorite German landmarks and a destination for art lovers all over the world. I hope you guys enjoy our tour of the Eltz Castle, even though we can't take pictures and videos inside. Until next time, bye. So guys, if you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and feel free to comment.
Hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell. Come on guys, hit the bell.
For notifications.
And don't forget to share.
And